Mayor Marlin.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yes, I wanted to, since this ordinance is related to the proposed purchase of the license plate readers, I think it's important to summarize what we're talking about, what we think they will do, what we know they will not do before we start this discussion. So I appreciate Wayne Williams distinguishing between a surveillance camera and license plate readers. We're not proposing to purchase surveillance cameras. They will not record audio or video. These are not Ring doorbells, nor do we claim that it will stop gun violence. What we're proposing is a purchase of license plate readers that takes a real-time snapshot of the rear of vehicles and the license plate as they're passing by. These are simply an investigative tool, one investigative tool that we can add to our toolbox that can help identify vehicles that may be involved in shootings and other crimes. These license plate readers can help provide information that witnesses and victims are either unable to provide, unwilling, or afraid to provide. That's what we're running into in this community for good reason. The ALPRs provide an opportunity to improve our countywide collaboration across jurisdictions to solve shootings and other crimes. They help remove human error and bias from vehicle identification. They're cost effective compared to a lot of other tools out there, and they can be strategically deployed. The APLR data is owned and protected by the city, and I believe that they can help disrupt the pattern of retaliatory shootings that is, as we've heard over and over again, traumatizing families and neighborhoods in recent years. An important component of this whole program is the policy governing their use. I fully understand the importance of protecting people's civil rights and safeguarding against abuse of the system. And every tool, or many tools that we have in the city, have use policies associated with them, and this is no different. Typically, when we're implementing a new tool, I think back to the body cameras, further back to tasers, you can move ahead with purchase and planning for implementation, and development and getting the details of the policy finalized takes place in a parallel track, so that you can end up, when you're ready for implementation, you have a finalized policy in place that governs their use. But in no cases we were ever proposing to implement this program without the policy in place. We just believe it's important to move in a parallel track. And that's basically where we are at this point. So this ordinance is related to obtaining funds to purchase these license plate readers. Thanks.
Okay, before we continue, I'd like to make a motion, or I don't know if I can make a motion. Would someone entertain making a motion to extend the meeting?
I'll make a motion that we extend the meeting until 10:45.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, James. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Elizabeth?
Sure. I'll just hit a few key points related to the budget amendment for this item. So first of all, because this is a budget amendment, it does require 6 of 8 affirmative votes, so that the mayor votes on this as well. So this budget amendment would basically reallocate unspent funds in the police department uniform line item from last year into this year's budget, so that those funds are available for the automatic LPR system. I do want to mention that even if not for this specific request, we would have been asking you to roll those funds forward at some point in any case. and I'll give you some very quick background. Some years ago, we cleaned up the vehicle and equipment replacement fund, and there were a number of very small expenditure items included there. Some of them were a few $100s. And so in the process of determining what should remain in the VERF, which we ultimately decided was capital expenditures that are 5,000 and over, those smaller items were moved into operating budgets with the understanding that we would essentially create a revolving fund. So after the end of the fiscal year, we would rebudget that money into the following year. And the reason for that is that those expenditures don't occur on necessarily a regular schedule. We budgeted a level amount, but we know that they don't happen in even amounts each fiscal year. So I just want to point out that's kind of a unique thing about the particular line item that we're asking to rebudget here. But I think that's all I need to say about the budget amendment.
Okie dokie. Chief Seraphin, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Sharice. I do have a couple of points. We brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to refine some of the understanding because I've done it myself. And I had there was some discussion about where's the information and how is it all stored and what exactly is it. And someone had told the story. I think this is interesting to help, as if someone was sitting alongside the road in a lawn chair with a notebook and just simply wrote date, time, and this plate went by. Date, time, and this plate, the next plate went by. And that person would call and make sure that wasn't flagged in Leeds as stolen or NCIC or Amber Alert or Silver Alert or not on the local hot list. And if it wasn't, that notebook would just sit there. And then we have ultimately, if we had a shooting, we'd go back and we'd find the person with the notebook and say, hey, we're looking for something within, an hour last night at between 1 and 2 a.m. And I just say that because I think there was some confusion, and I know that I was 100% clear that the system does not check for Secretary of State records. So there's not names, driver's license information, registration information, those kinds of things. And again, the proposed right now retention is 30 days for this particular system. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that a little bit. I know there's some other questions that come in with regards to FOIA. I will just say that this is a new area for FOIA law and for other legal experts. Matter of fact, Flock had 2 systems in 2019 in Illinois, and they're over 40 now. And so as this area evolves, one of the things that so will some of these other issues. As of right now, it is staff's assessment that these items, the reports that we would get would not be subject to FOIA, that there are certain exemptions that would apply. I will also state that we have even had some preliminary conversations trying to sort this out with the public access counselor of the Attorney General's office. In addition, it's my understanding that there is some pending legislation now that's moving through with regards to license plate readers generally, and within the state legislation on this topic is also some guidance with regards to the FOIA statute and not having that material be disclosed. And again, I'm checking a couple of quick notes because, like I said, I know I had gotten some questions. There was a question regarding other municipalities and access to those, if you will, the notebooks and the information that exists. And we can accept or deny other municipalities access to our system. There is an audit trail. And so I'll jump forward with regards now to just some basic policy points. Absolutely, the council can provide input, make sure that we understand what everybody's concerns are, and make sure that we build a policy that satisfies those things. Clearly, number one, first and foremost, this information in the LPR system would be for law enforcement use only. Any misuse would be subject to discipline. There's certain training for the specific system, as well as to make sure that there's LEEDS certifications for those who would have access to this. The other thing that I don't want to get lost in this, is that any information that would come in, if there was a hit, hey, there's a stolen car that just drove by camera X. The officers must verify that it's the correct information. Is this plate trying to correct for any maybe errors that would occur? They must verify before they take action. Another component of the policy would be documenting any action that they do take. So whether that's with a police report or perhaps a traffic citation or whatnot, those actions would be documented. And again, we would have an audit process. We're reviewing a couple of other different policies that we've gotten a hold of, and some do annual, some do quarterly. And so we're trying to decipher the best way exactly to do that. We could look at things like frequencies of plates. I know there was some concern, and the Flock system has fields that can be sorted. So we could look and say, okay, well, what plate is being run, or is there an officer that's doing something that whose name shows up more? The other thing I wanted to also note is that, again, there could be a difference between who just gets the notices in that, hey, a car drove by camera X, as opposed to those who can enter or those who can search, and whether we refine those and scope it down to, okay, if you want to enter and search, it's just for supervisors or detectives, but we're not allowing the entire department to be able to enter and search things. And so those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. I know that I think Mr. Evans even brought up something like what would be in. We saw a policy where if they weren't going to do city ordinance violations or low level events, if you will, like no registration violations. So there's work in progress as we're working through this. Those areas, though, are clearly ones that we want to be aware of. So I guess I will let the conversation continue, but I know those are questions that we've gotten. Thank you, Sharice.
We entertain a motion of sorts to at least get the topic on the, for discussion on the table.
Teresa, I can make a motion.
Okay,
I'll move that ordinance number 2021-09044, an ordinance revising the fiscal year 2022 annual budget amendment number 3 is moved to city council with no recommendation.
I'll second.
okay. Mary Alice made the motion and James seconded it. Discussion. Mary Alice.
I want to thank the chief and the mayor for giving some more context and background. A lot of stuff that I've been thinking about in terms of these license plate readers, you covered. I do want to state that I spent quite a bit of time this weekend looking at various court cases in terms of these license plate readers, Maryland, Kansas, California, and so forth. Some of the things that came up in those court cases was the amount of license plate readers. So the totality of the entire communities being covered, I think that was a concern in Maryland. And based on our conversation last week, I think that the estimate would be approximately 20 that would be in our community. Another thing that came up in Kansas was the automatic flagging of a car and not requiring the police officer to validate that the number that they said was there was the car that they stopped. So I would just kind of add that into a policy. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, because we've talked a little bit about the ACLU, and there's a big report. Jaya, thank you for sharing that with me. And the basic things that they talked about were the consistent monitoring, which we just talked about, what I just talked about with Maryland in terms of the pervasiveness of the cameras, the amount of time that we are keeping the data. So there are apparently some communities that keep the data forever. ACLU has a problem with that. So I think the proposal is for 30 days. Rand also wrote a 160-page report that I read this weekend. And the two things that they talked about, again, were the two uses for these cases. So there is reactive, right? And then there is analytic, like trying to stop crime. And I think that somebody in the public actually talked about that today. My understanding is this is more of a reactive state. So if some crime happens, then that gets put into the system as a hot list. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bryant, but I didn't think that we were using it for analytic purposes, trying to predict crime in different areas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so with that, I think we minimize the number of cars that we're kind of tracking, so to speak, because those cars have already been identified as potentially part of a crime that that just existed. And then, the second thing that the RAND talks about is basically a requirement to need to know. So the people who have access, which you talked about, are only the people in the department who need to know the information would have access to the system. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I think while I'm supportive of us moving forward with this, I think the important thing is that the policy get developed and shared. I appreciate asking for our input in that so that we can be comfortable that there's enough checks and balances to address any potential abuses. Of course, limiting the scope of who can access the information is one major step towards preventing abuse. But there, the review of who's using it and how often, and understanding the justification for that is another really straightforward model that we can implement to make sure it's not abused. I think the disconnect between the information that this system is going to be gathering and the Secretary of State traffic information is an important circuit breaker here, so that don't get mixed, and that we're not saving names and other information associated with people who are just driving by. I think that's an important thing to maintain, and something that we have to insist doesn't become a part of the tool going forward. The one of the values of doing this for a limited period of time is there's not a front end capital expense. So if after a year it's not working out, it's not helping us in the way we thought it was, we can walk away, and we're not leaving equipment or other things on the table. They have to come and take it, is what I understand. They would have to come and deinstall it if we didn't renew the contract for future years. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. So I'm supportive, but I do think we have to have an active conversation going forward about these tools to prevent abuse and to make sure definitely that we're seeing some kind of results out of this that justify the investment.
Okay, thank you, James. Jaya?
So I want to note that I appreciate that we're thinking about how to do something quickly. I know we're all very concerned about the gun violence in our community, and I'd mentioned last week that I'd started kind of reviewing what literature was available, and I appreciate that some other council members asked to share those resources. And Mary Alice has already shared some of what I found. I will say that some of the biggest things that stood out to me were not only concerns about Fourth Amendment rights, which was a question that Chandra had asked when we had the presentation, but also questions about privacy and free speech, and the ACLU talking about actually a chilling effect on those other rights for people. And I want to make it clear that I did a pretty comprehensive review. I looked at reports that were very supportive of this technology, including from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. The RAND report, generally speaking, was very supportive. I read another research study that was on board as well, but they noted that there was no statistical significance in the difference in crime rates that they found after implementing this technology. But one of the biggest things that I saw, no matter what source I was looking at, was a clear need for policies to be in place before thinking about implementing something like this. So while I hear that, often things are done in tandem, this is still an investment. This is an investment of resources that we know we want to do something, right, with these funds to address gun violence, but we don't yet know if this is the right way to do it, because none of us have seen even a draft proposal or of a policy, right? Even in the conversation tonight is it could, right? It could say this. could is not an answer. We need to know what is going to be in those policies before we can be asked to make a decision about this. So like I said, just clearly saw over and over again, the need for clear policies, the potential for abuse is something that was cited. I'd mentioned this when we were first discussing this, as well as concerns about tracking former partners, tracking activists. There was a research study that looked at Muslim folks who were being tracked as they went to and from their mosques. So I'm not saying that these things are going to happen, but we need to know what policies are going to be in place to protect people before we can implement something like this, as much as we all want to move quickly to address the gun violence in our community.
Grace?
Thank you. Mine's along the same lines. I definitely agree with and understand the urgent need to address community violence. As made very clear, these license plate readers will not prevent violent crimes. They will not prevent it. No one is saying that. So I understand that we need to address the issue. But I want to see policy and more information and research before approving. I think that I'm not necessarily against them. I think that they have a place and they could have some good advantages and some uses with the retaliatory stuff and solving some of the violent crimes. But I think that we need to know the policy, all the research, and the safeguards that are going to be in place to prevent abuse or misuse of the system. The way I see it, if we approve this now, there will be no more input from the council and the public. On its policy, the location, we don't even know where these are. There was a 4-page report that we're going to use to approve this, and that is just not enough information for me. We don't have information about how it will be reported, how we'll oversee that audited system. I think this is bare bones, too rushed, and we need more information. If we're working on this parallel track with purchasing and policy, why can't we put the policy first? Approval is pretty simple. It takes us one meeting, a cow and then a council meeting to approve it. The policy, I imagine, would take much longer. So if we're working in parallel, why don't we have some more work on the policy first, and then we can consider approving it? Because I don't believe that we'll have any more input or transparency if we approve this now, and we won't have the chance to have input on things like what the policy and location will be, what kind of reports we'll have for the public and for council. And I think that we need a lot more things in place before we can address this important issue with this technology.
Okay, before I call on anyone else, I'd like to extend the meeting. Is anyone going to motion for that?
I'll move that we extend it to 11.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Can you please tell me who seconded that?
It was Jaya.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor, I think you wanted to interject something.
Yeah, just I wondered if the chief could clarify a timeline. If this was approved next week for purchase, it's not like these readers would be installed within a couple of days. It's going to take weeks of planning for the implementation, which is why that will give us time to also develop the policy and to continue to get input from the community and from you. So this is not something that is going to happen overnight in terms of even implementing this. But maybe the chief has more information.
I don't know that I have a whole lot more, but yes, it would take weeks for us to actually get in the queue. And I understand the policy concerns. As a matter of fact, we have hammered out a very rough draft already, but I don't think we have gotten where we want to be yet with it. So, but I understand everyone's concerns. But yes, it would take weeks to try to even, once this gets moving, before they won't be here and install on Thursday. No.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for your comments tonight, because it follows along, and I really appreciate you being concerned about policy. We have to understand that this technology will not just affect the shooters or the criminals. It affects potentially everybody. Everybody's going to get their car photographed. Everybody's going to get their license plate recorded. Everybody's car and plate will be stored. And, Chief, I'm sorry, but you keep saying it's just, yeah, Flock is not running it by the DMV, but your police department will. This license plates yield names and addresses. You can't deny that. I have, done some research as well, and I have got 20 issues that I think need to be in a policy, in a written policy. And I think that before we can approve anything, the public needs to see what is our policy. So I'm not going to bore you with my list of 20 things that I think should be in the policy, but I will also go to the incredible meeting that we had September 20th, where, a digital surveillance company provides zero statistics regarding the effectiveness of this tool. We have no statistics regarding how many arrests can be attributed to these cameras. We have no statistics regarding the number of shooters that have been arrested because of these cameras. We have no statistics as to the reduction of shots fired in other cities that are experiencing, have, because of these cameras. Have the shots fired gone down where cities have these cameras? We have nothing. We have two anecdotes, one in Rantoul, one in Decatur. I found anecdotes in my research. In Colorado, women and children were handcuffed face down on the concrete because the license plate reader thought their SUV was a stolen motorcycle out of state. In Vallejo, California, 37% of their readings are misreads. So do I make a decision based on those anecdotes? We cannot do this on two anecdotes. So I'm asking, one, that the city provide a written policy that the public can look over first, and two, can Flock Safety provide some statistics? They've had 3 years in Illinois, 40 cities. It's a digital program. Can they provide the statistics? Because the public is counting on this to work. You heard the public comment tonight. They think we're going to catch shooters. They think it's going to reduce the shootings. I'd like to see that information. And because of that, I'm going to motion that we table this until that information is provided.
I'll second.
Second.
Actually, the correct motion would be to keep it in committee. Tabling it would kill it.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Did not mean to do that. I would motion to keep it in committee.
So I already have a motion on the floor, Chris, but I am happy to change it to keep it in the committee. And Phyllis, can you direct us on the proper procedure?
All you have to do is to rescind the motion that you put through to have it sent to council without recommendation, and then restate the motion to state to just to keep it in committee. That's all you have to do.
Do I need to have approval from the second?
Yes.
All right, so I will rescind my motion to send this on to city council with no recommendation, and change my motion to keep this in committee. So I guess, James, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I will agree to that.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
No.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop, yes, Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
And now we're back to discussion again. Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a minute?
Yeah, but discussion's over, Sharice, but I will take the chair if you want me to.
Okay,
The chair recognizes
well,
Sharice.
well, because we've got a new motion, a different motion, don't we?
We just
so I-
voted on that one.
So my question is, isn't there a discussion then after that? After you move in second and take roll?
Fellas, can you help us out?
Well, generally, you do your discussion before you take your final action. And when you voted on that to move it back into committee, you took your final action.
Okay, then that's okay. I can wait.
Can I make a suggestion as current chair?
Go
That
ahead.
your comments could be during council input.
No, because I get way too much to say and I'm not going
Okay.
to be held to 3 minutes.
Okay, all right, well, I relinquish the chair to Ms. Hersey.